So I'm Bartek, and today I wanted to quickly show you how hooks work in React. So not how to use hooks, but how they actually work under the hood. So it might seem very complicated, but in general, it's not. So at first, I'd like to ask you who knows what closures are. Okay, so not that many people. So that's great that I've prepared an example for it. At first, can you tell me if you can see what's on the screen? Or should I make it a bit bigger? Sure. Okay, so closures in JavaScript aren't a thing that is a part of language itself. It's not a feature of a language, but it's a thing that is a consequence of other things. We've got something called scope in JavaScript. So this is the where the variable is visible. Right here, we've got a function that has got a variable number. And this variable will be visible in all of this function. And then we define a new function inside that function, which uses that number. And then you can see that I've got it here run. So I've got logger1 and logger2. And then here you can see that we've got, we run the logger1 twice, and we've got the very same thing. So we don't have a new random number, but we've got the number saved inside this number, and then it is being used here in a logger. So you can see that basically we've got this variable saved, and then we can use it inside other functions from a function. I don't know if I explained it well, but I've got 5 minutes, so I have to run. Yes, so basically what hooks in React are closures. So here you can see a very simple implementation of a use state hook. Maybe I can also try to run it. I'm glad that I decided not to live code it because that would be a disaster. Yes, so we've got use state here. You can see we've got a value that is being fed an initial value. You can see it here. So we've got a hook that has initial value of 0. And then we've got a function inside it that sets the state. We've got something, I couldn't use normal React, so we've got something in place of it. So we've got a function, like a component, that returns the render method and a click method. So basically, we're trying to simulate what's going on. And then we just return a value and set state tuple as it is in React. So you can see that I am then running the component and trying to render it. And the first render gives us a counter of 0. Then I have a click. So I try to set the counter and increment it. And you can see that in set state, I'm getting a new value and setting it to the value variable. And then I try to render it again, but you can see that I've got still a counter of 0. So this is something called a state closure. So when I have got this function and I run it, what this value is being set to is what is currently in this value. So it's returning a value by its value and not by its reference. So it's returning the thing that is currently inside this value, this variable. So we'll always have counter of 0 here because, well, we run it once and then it's always the same thing. So what we can do to prevent it, we can create another closure. So we've got then a closure inside a closure. So right now you can see that we've got a module here that is my React, and it's a function that it's being immediately run So it's an IFI, so-called. I could like call it my get my React and then run it, but just to make it shorter. Then I've got the value here, which is like a value that will hold the state of this hook. And then we've got a useState function, pretty much the same as it was before, but I'm setting a value here at the beginning, an initial value. If the value wasn't set, then I try to use the default one, and I've got a setState function that, well, is being returned. And right now, you can see that I'm using it in this way, that I've got a myReact.useState, the very same thing as before. And yes, so what I do is I run a component here, I render it, so you can see that it's counter 0. Did not work. Oh, yeah. That's a very important thing, right? Okay. Okay. Okay, let's try to do it like this. And yeah, it worked. Okay, so in here you can see that like we hold the value here. We don't. Yes, we hold the value here, and like every time we call the useState right now, we'll be trying to return that value. And what we do then is the component this time, what it does is we've got an instance, and then we try to like call the component. So we get the value of counter. We render it, so there's something like this. We click, so do an action, and then we call the component once again. So we call the useState once again, and now we can use we use the value that was being set here while we were clicking on the while we were running the click function. Okay, and that's basically how it works. The other thing that we have in React is that we can have multiple useStates, and it's like very easy as what multiple hooks are just an array. So we just have an array of hooks. We've got an index, and every time we render, so this time I've introduced a render function here that will call an instance, call the render function, and then reset the current index. And each time we call the useState, we get the current index, we get the current value of this index, and give it like an initial value. Then we set it so that the initial value is set. So in a hooks array on the index current hook index, we set the value. We've got the setState function that sets the value at the current hook index on a hooks array. And then we increment the current index variable, which is very important, and it's the thing that I always forgot when I was writing it and trying to prepare. And yes, so we've got it running here. So we've got a component. So you can see that we are using the useState here twice. We've got a render function, a click, and a type this time. So if maybe I can change it to in index.html. Hopefully it will work. Okay, so again, we've got render. So we render it here. We've got then click. So the counter incremented. We've got text, and then we type something. And this one also changed. So like two states work. And yes, this is basically what React hooks are. It's not that complicated if you think about it. Like underneath the real React, it's a bit more complicated. But yes, pretty much the whole concept isn't that out of the world.